So hello everyone, good to be with you on this Sunday. We'll do a meditation. I'll offer some light guidance for us to begin, and then followed by a silent sit together. Let's enjoy each other's company and practicing together. Arriving here and now. Taking a few generous moments to arrive. Not rushing through this arriving process. Coming to your meditation cushions, chairs. Maybe just take a few moments to allow your feet to really settle on the ground. Maybe the body still need to move. Riding with the movements of arriving. When you're ready, allow the contact of the body with wherever you're sitting to be in the forefront of your awareness. Noticing that you have arrived here. And you have arrived now. Feeling and sensing into the contact of the body with the floor and the earth underneath of you. Grounded, supported by earth. What's the felt sense of a grounded here and now? In this body, with this breath. Maybe the bubbly energy that you came with settles down ever so slightly. And maybe the movements of the breath become more visible. Let yourself savor in the sense of groundedness, centered, from this grounded place. Open the awareness to receive whatever is present right here and right now. Movements of the breath, sensations in the body, wavy emotions, lingering thoughts, nothing excluded. Being with the ever-changing experiences. If the breath is prominent, resting, grounding in the movements of the breath, being with the breath, nothing to do, nowhere to go, just here with the movements of the breath. Strong sensations in the body arise. No problem. Open the space of awareness to be with the sensations in the body, just as they are. We're learning to be with what is here. Whatever is here. We're learning to be with. So good to be here with you all. Very delighted. I'm aware that you're probably all sitting for a while. For those who are online or in person, if you need to move, feel free to do so. Just allow the body to shift and change a little as we shift and change in a different mode of practicing and learning Dharma. So what's on my mind today is a couple of words that I like to share my reflections upon. And those are the words grounding or groundedness. I've introduced this couple of words in our meditation just slightly. And so those two words, grounding, groundedness, may evoke something in you. And even now, as you're sitting or lying down, standing, and just checking to see what is the felt sense of grounding or grounded, being grounded. For me, there is an immediate sense of resting down, settling down. Be a sense of a safety, sense of a trust, feeling secure here, not worried that somehow the ground will disappear underneath of me. So you may have words and phrases, images of your own in this sense of a grounding or being grounded. And so for me, what I'd like to share today is a reflective question. Where do we ground ourselves? Where do we ground ourselves? As human beings, one way or another, we're always finding grounds to settle in. Consciously, unconsciously, ever since we were born. And when we were babies, the parents' arms are the nice, comfy grounds to be in, kind of resting there. As we grow up, lots of different grounds open up for us. Relationships with the friends, family, relationships in communities, maybe coming together here. Feels a sense of a grounding, and there's a sense of a trust and safety as we are in specific kinds of communities. And our heart and mind and body can rest. Feel some sense of settling in this kind of grounds. Then there are also other kind of grounds, and some of us find grounds in jobs, work we do, the careers, and they offer certain kind of a fulfillment, excitement, certain sense of security in different ways, maybe. And grounds of hobby, and grounds of entertainment. That's where we are kind of feeling okay, a sense of okayness may come in, a sense of resting can come in when we're engaged in those activities. And the list can go on. Lots of these grounds can open up as we go about living our lives. And some of these grounds, as we begin to get a sense of them emerging, we may also notice many of those grounds involve a pattern of activities and doing. In relationships, we have to find relationships, maintain them. Jobs and careers that offer our fulfillment, had to really work at it and be in it. And for me, I remember when I first came to this country more than 30 years ago, and as a college student, I immediately realized that that there was absolutely no security in any form. No financial security, no relationships, and I just immediately got very busy trying to get a degree as fast as possible, and just so that I could feel a little comfort in achieving that, and getting a part-time job while doing that. I remember days when I would spend all night in the computer graphics lab working on my project. And this is all okay. I think we all do this in our lives from time to time. And little did I know, though, as I engage in this pattern, and this can become a habit of doing, achieving more, accomplishing more, acquiring more. And so, I got a degree and got a job, and in my job, I could do this, or I could climb the corporate ladder. And so it doesn't stop. And so we all know that as individual engaging this way, and if many people engage in the same way, before we know it, there is a culture began to evolve around all of us. There's a culture of doing, culture of busy doing, endless doing, accomplishing, achieving. And once the culture is emerging all around us, that can become a norm. We don't even know other possibilities exist. And so we just keep engaging in this. And sometimes I recognize that even when retirement comes, the doing doesn't stop, as we just shift from one kind of doing to another. I remember at my work, there was someone who retired, I think close to 80-year-old, but after retirement, he still shows up in the lab. And I was wondering, wow, this really goes on and on. And we can begin to kind of let this habit force kind of take over us, continue in this mode. I want to offer an image. Well, before I do that, I want to point out maybe that it's not to say that all of this is our problems. What I wanted to point out is, as we began to reinforce this pattern in our lives, we began to engage in an unconscious dynamic. And often, this is driven by the forces of wanting, desires. and greed, hatred, delusion. But as we kind of continue to engage in this pattern, we lose sight what is driving underneath of us. The image that I have in this mode of operation is that of constant dancing on tippy toes. It's kind of before one foot landed completely on the ground, the next foot had to move, because that the next foot, the next landing is where we can finally stabilize and ground and rest. But as we know, when this pattern began to engage on its own, kind of have its own life, we just tippy-toe dance, not knowing the resting is even possible. And so we can begin to find it difficult to know what's possible to really ground. I remember that my teacher, Gil Franstow, sometimes pointed out that maybe human beings should be called human doings, because we really do. We do a lot. And it's very fortunate. For me, it's not until I encountered Dharma practice and Dharma teachings that I realized that there is a different kind of grounding that we can rest in. The ground of being with what is happening here and now. I like putting the 2 feet on the ground, really solid on the ground. And even for all of us right now, just, as you settle in your chairs and the floor, and just allow yourself to feel the feet on the ground, sitting on the cushion or on the chairs, lying down, wherever you are, standing. What is that felt sense of a being? Being with what is happening here and now. Being with listening. Being with the breath, moving, coursing through us. Being with the seeing. Being with the sound inside and outside. Thoughts. Nothing to do. Nowhere to go. For me, that sense of a being often immediately evoke a sense of resting down, that sense of groundedness that we were speaking about and practicing with. Opening and receiving what is happening here and now. Being contented with what is here. Not wishing it to be any other way. We don't have to tippy-toe to the next step. But here is enough. Maybe the pain, unpleasant sensations are here. Unpleasant emotions are here. But it's okay to be with. To be with this is enough. For me, there is a sense of a contentment coming along, and maybe also a sense of a centeredness. Oh, right here, rooted, right here, right now. Being grounded in the way things are, not what I wanted it to be, but the way things are. And the Pali term that gets translated as the way things are is that of a Dharma, grounded in Dharma. And this is not to say that somehow we'll just have a magic way of simply stopping altogether, stopping the doing, stopping the momentum, stopping the wanting. Doesn't happen. There's no magic button to push, right? We all know that. And yet, as we engage in the Dharma practice from time to time, we may discover the moments where we can be with what is happening. And it offers an opportunity to know and to see that there is a different possibility for us. And as we engage in the Dharma practice, we may also learn, there is a different kind of a doing that allow the being to come about, to be in our experience. And this is the kind of a doing that that in our Dharma world referred to as walking the Dharma path. It involves certain kind of doing. And you all come here today and practice meditation together, learning the Dharma together. There is a form of doing engaged. And yet this kind of a doing are conducive to settling and resting, conducive to an establishment of a sense of a well-being. I love the term well-being. It's kind of a being that has a goodness to it, kind of a being that we can trust. It's very fortunate and that this is possible. This is available to us. And walking the Dharma path is a form of a doing that one can engage in that allow a different ground to emerge. I pointed out early on the kind of activities that we engage in, the kind of doing that we engage in involves maybe sometimes a lot of physical activities. And I also want to point out that there is a kind of a doing that happen in our mind. And so we discover this as we begin to sit on the cushion. And oftentimes, when we began our meditative practice, even though our bodies settled down, immediately we'll discover how much we think, right? And boy, they're loud and persistent. And knowing that this is also a long-term conditioning that happen, maybe from very early on. I'm aware that my teenager son, and needs to figure things out a lot. I'm fond of this terms and figure things out, sorting things out in our mind, because we never really out. we always keep figuring, continue to figure, but never really kind of out of it. Maybe out of it momentarily, but next one will come pretty quickly. And we're kind of aware of this kind of doing as well internally, internal chatter. For me, I never realized how much I talk to myself in meditation. It's constant yap, inner chatter going on. And our culture, and there is a culture norm that supports this, conditions this, right? And the more knowledge we have and the more information we accumulate, somehow we will be okay, we'll be able to figure things out. And so we get stimulated by constant feeds into our being, and social media, emails, and internet, and what have you. And this thinking machine is constantly fed with lots of sources. And so figuring things out sometimes can become a belief, an idea that we have, we hold. So even if our physical bodies are settled down, and that belief may still continue to feel, feel the momentum in our patterns of thinking, patterns of planning. And yet, walking the Dharma path, we begin to learn, what is a different possibility? What is a different possibility here? It's great, we are offered with mindfulness practices, allow us to begin to see the patterns exist in us, offer tools for us to begin to settle into our experiences. So mindfulness of the body, of our breath, invite us to begin to settle in the experience that's happening here and now. And sometimes, you may have this experience yourself. As you settle into the rhythm of the breath, sensations in the body, our beliefs about having to think through everything may soften. We may have momentary experience of silence, even the silence in between my words, space, some momentary stillness. However small it may feel like. And this might be the pointers for us to say, oh, there may be a different ground that's possible here. Again, I want to invite you to just check in your body, however it is. Maybe in the midst of the movements in the body, there can be a sense of silence, kind of a stillness that's not rejecting all the things that are happening, but just being with. Listening to the sound, and yet the silence can be in the backdrop of it all. I'm fond of this story of Mother Teresa from the book Civility. This is an interview with Mother Teresa. There is an interviewer asked Mother Teresa what she says to God when she prays. I don't say anything, she replies, just listen. And so the interviewer asked her what God says to her. He doesn't say anything, said Mother Teresa. He just listens. And before the astonished interviewer could press her further, she added, and if you don't understand that, I can't explain it to you. So quietly listen. Listen to the vibrations within us, vibrations outside, quiet, still. When we're more and more grounded ourselves in the way things are, not wishing it to be in any other way. Grounded in being, actions can arise spontaneously out of wisdom, compassion. And so this form of a being is not some form of idleness and simply kind of giving up, doing nothing, but rather it's a deep trust of the inner wisdom and compassion that's available to us. And the kind of trust that allows the kind of doing that emerges not to base on the wanting and the aversion or the delusion, but based on the big field of compassion and wisdom. And so this form of being is a rich and potent field, and not a barren field. I want to offer a poem from Dao De Jing, which is written by a Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, translated by Stephen Mitchell. And it says, this is the Dao De Jing, chapter 15. The ancient masters who were profound and subtle, their wisdom was unfathomable. There is no way to describe it. All we can describe is their appearance. They were careful as someone crossing an ice-covered stream, alert as a warrior in enemy territory, courteous as a guest, fluid as melting ice, shapeable as a block of wood, receptive as a valley, clear as a glass of water. Do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself? The master doesn't seek fulfillment, not seeking, not expecting. She is present and can welcome all things. So there is a kind of doing that's fueled by wanting, delusion, that leads to more doing, tippy-toe dancing. And there is a form of a doing that leads to being, well-being. And this being is rich, potent, flexible. This being is shapeable as a block of wood. Can be a stick for someone who needs a stick to walk around. Can be a pillar holding the structure of the building. And so there is this form of a being that offers the potential of doing for the benefit of all beings, for the well-being of all beings. But this happens when we have the patience to wait for the mud to settle and the water to be clear. And so this practice that we're engaging in is to learn to be, to settle, to allow the mud to settle. And so our heart and mind become clear. And the right actions arise by itself. And so may we all trust the wholesome doing that allow the well-being to emerge. and trusting the doing that arise out of a deep sense of well-being. And may all beings be benefited by this. So thank you, everybody. So we have a few minutes. Maybe anyone who have comments and protest, questions, welcome. Yeah. Or your own reflections.
Ying, that must have been a good Dharma talk, because during it I realized how unsettled and antsy and restless my body was.
Yeah. As noticing it, it has a lot of power. Yeah. Thank you.
It wasn't pleasant to notice it, but it was kind of wonderful in a way, because, oh yes, I've got this body and I'm alive.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So there's one behind you.
Thank you, Ying. That was so beautiful. I have a request and then a question. My request is if you could read the poem one more time.
Mm-hmm.
And then my question is about that, waiting for the, what was it, the mud to settle?
Mud to settle, yeah.
If you could talk about how that process might unfold, that would be great.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Let me read the poem one more time, and then maybe we'll unpack a little, see how we get the mud to settle. The ancient masters were profound and subtle. Their wisdom was unfathomable. There is no way to describe it. All we can describe is their appearance. They were careful as someone crossing an ice-covered stream, alert as a warrior in enemy territory, courteous as a guest, fluid as melting ice, shapeable as a block of wood, receptive as a valley, clear as a glass of water. Do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving until the right action arises by itself? The master doesn't seek fulfillment, not seeking, not expecting. She is present and can welcome all things. Yeah, so, and here it offers the words of patience, have the patience to wait till the mud settles. This image evoked in me is that of sitting right here, being in the midst of what's happening here and now, as Bill was pointing out. Sitting here, noticing the unease that may be in the body, in the mind. Do we have the patience to be with this? Because so often when unpleasant experiences happen, we immediately wanted to tiptoe to the next step. I got to get rid of this one. And what this invites us is to be with this. Allow this experience to unfold on its own terms, not based on what I believe it should be, or I would rather this not happening to me. There's lots of agendas that our habitual mind can have and wanted to wiggle out of where we are. And we've offered in the Dharma practice lots of tools to establish that kind of a sense of a centeredness, being with, and for example, mindfulness of the breath, being with the breath as the breath unfolds on its own, being with the body, in the body, of the body, not as of my belief of what the body is supposed to be. And so a lot of these things that you've been practicing is pointing to this direction. And part of it, this is, and the trick is to begin to notice various patterns that emerge in us that are wanting to wiggle this way or that way. And so when we cultivate mindfulness, we begin to see those momentum. And we just look at them and smile. Can I be with this? And let it flow. So the mud will settle. But if, we can try, if we, want to get rid of this or want to hold on that, we can see what impact it has. And does that lead to settledness, or does it lead to more spinning around? And so this, as long as we begin to open our awareness to see this, we will begin to see the kind of inner functions of this. And I want begin to see I don't like to use the word logic because it doesn't feel logical. Sometimes they're pretty chaotic. But we will begin to see certain patterns, and we'll begin to know what will actually support a sense of well-being and what doesn't. Does that seem to land? Yeah? Okay, thank you. Maybe the last one, if there is one. Otherwise, well, then we can stop right here. Thank you so much, everyone, for your practice. And may you continue. Take good care.